There's really only about two things you should be thinking about when you're planning for the next 6 weeks or next quarter. And especially around this time of year, it's oftentimes we're always constantly focusing on one thing. But I'm suggesting that there's always two things to really consider before you actually do any planning. So today's show is all about what those two things are and how to implement them. So let's get right on to the show. Hey there, it's Laurence Tham here, your chiro coach. We're going to talk about the two things that's going to help you sort of really plan successfully to get closer to your particular goal. Our goal in Nitro is to always help people get towards profit practice, but more importantly, to have a freedom practice. So if you're interested in that, please give us a ring or send me a message because we got a couple available spots for Nitro to help you do that in the next year. But let's talk about planning. Because when it comes to planning, we have to know what your destination or your objective is in that planning. If you don't know what you're going, it's really difficult to plan what to do during that period of time. And this is where the critical thing most people miss out. That most people think, I wasn't going to plan to talk about this, but it starts here, right? Because you have to know where you're going. If you don't know what your destination is, if you don't know where you're going, you can take any map or any road to get there, right? Because it doesn't really matter. And unless you know your destination, right? Once you know your destination, you then can find the right route to kind of get you there because there's probably multiple routes. And so define what your destination is. So start out with this, obviously, where you go in the next 3 to 5 years, and then decide what you're going to be in the next year, for example. And then from that destination, then you can work out at any particular given point in that year to really figure out exactly what you need to execute on. So most importantly thing, this is the trouble is that most people, if I ask any chiropractor, any practitioner, any business owner, what's your focus on in this particular quarter in the next 90 days? Most of the time, they're going to say growth. But here's the problem, right? Business growth isn't like this. It never goes like that. It hardly ever falls into a straight line. And this is the challenge that most people are trying to do is it's like, yeah, I want growth. But is that the same goal that you've had for, the last year or the last quarter or the quarter before that? And how many years have you been thinking about growth, but never achieving it? So do you want to continue doing the same thing over and over again, or are you going to try to change some of your perspective? So in today's episode, I really want to kind of focus on two things you should consider at any given time of any business. You should be really thinking about two things, and you have a choice, but you have to make a decision before you go towards a particular quarter. So we work in 90-day chunks, for example, so 90-day cycles. And if you're going to work on the 90 days, you got to decide, are you A or are you B? And let's talk about what A and B is. Number one, of course, yes, you can go for growth if that is what you're trying to do. So you can go for scale, right? Yes, if you want to go for scale, go for it. And this is what you're going to happen to do. It's like, yes, this quarter, we're going to go for scale. That's what we're aiming for. We're trying to grow. But remember, if this is like a 3-year goal, right, then the scale is usually a scale of going up towards something, right? So we got to go from one spot to another. And that's a scale process, and that's fine. But you got to dedicate every project, everything that you're moving towards to that scale project. And everything, the projects you're working on, the team, your objectives, and the way you're going to plan that out is all going to be towards that growth scale. And if you're doing things that are not growth scale, you're not going to get there. And hence, therefore, it's going to be really challenging. But here's the other thing you need to consider. And this is what I'm saying, which is plan B, or sort of plan A, and there's a plan B, which is you got to decide, is it going for scale, or maybe it's about stability, right? Let me talk you through this. Maybe it's about stability. Maybe it's about actually getting some stability first, because that's what that's what your practice needs right now. It's actually for you to be more stable so that you can grow the next phase. Because most of the time, most people in their practice and business, they focus so much on scale, but they never actually look at the foundation that they need to build so that you can scale. Now think about this. You as a chiropractor or any health practitioner, you all know this, right? Fundamentally, you know that. You tell your patients about this every single time. You tell them that if they want to get healthy, you have to get the baseline right. You got to get, the structure of the spine right. You got to get the nervous system right? And then if they want ultimate health, you got to get their diet right. You got to get their exercise right. You got to get their mind right. You got to get their sleep right. All of those things are basic foundations. Now, changing one of those things, just like get your diet right in the next 24 hours or even the next week, isn't going to change much. No, of course not, because you need time for the body to reset. You can't just start exercising within the next 2 weeks and all of a sudden thinking you're going to be strong enough to get healthy. Of course not, right? You get your mindset right that you're trying to, decondition 20 years or 30 years of, mindset that are more of a scarcity mindset instead of an abundant mindset. How are you supposed to change that, right? You can't change it overnight. It takes time. Sleep wise, you got to learn how to, increase your pattern of sleep, macronutrients and micronutrients. All those things are fundamental foundations. I'm not saying you need to spend, long periods of time, like years here. Of course, it's going to take years, but it's about periods of stability, periods of growth and scale. It's periods of stability, periods of growth and scale. So what it should look like in terms of if you want to grow, and this is how successful people grow, is to decide that it's about a bit of stability, a bit of growth, bit of stability, bit of scale, bit of stability and growth. And that's how you end up in this point, so that over time you're constantly growing. And so in the real world, most people go, wow, well, that person was successful, because they only see this. They see the outcome of how they were and what they started off with to where they ended up. But what they fail to see is all of this, right? All of this stuff that was happening behind the scenes. And that's the challenge. We are lost in this social media world into thinking that we are trying to get there fast and quick and overnight. No success has ever been done that. How long did it take you to graduate? It didn't happen over 1 year. You didn't pass just one exam and think that I'm a chiropractor. No, it took you 4 years, 5 years, and maybe even longer. It doesn't really matter how long, but it's about chipping away one thing at a time. Well, your practice and success shouldn't be expected you're going to get all the growth in 1 year. It's about over years, where you're trying to get to. And then the things that you need to decide on every quarter is about, are we in a stability stage or are we trying to scale? Make that decision, because how you make that decision now dictates the actions you take and the projects you take and what you're focused on, your team and yourself, to really build that foundation. If you're stability, build that foundation. Maybe it's like tweaking out the systems, maybe building the right culture, maybe it's fixing all these things that are broken so you're not leaking all these patients leaving. Maybe that's the first thing. Then you learn how to build more new patients and get more new patients in marketing, right? Then you got to, if you go from like 100 to 150, for example, that's a great growth. But if you can't expect that you can grow from 150 to 180 to 200 using the same systems and everybody doing the same thing, it's impossible, because there's no way the business structure is able to handle that load without breaking at some point. So then you got to go through this period of stability, right? Basing and changing rules, systems, and culture, and that wording and communication, so you can handle that flow without actually working overtime. That's the goal, right? We're trying to get to freedom here. We're not trying to work more hours just to see more people. We're trying to see more people in less hours. So therefore, you need to find some time of stability. And then we're going to then go, okay, now we're ready. Then we're going to grow. And that's what this whole chart is really about, is to figure out, decide every 90 days, what is your focus? Is it on stability or is it on scale? Because deciding that is going to make a massive difference in terms of your life and how you're going to be able to get there. If you truly want success, in the years to come, decide every 90 days, right? It's only 4 times a year. Are you in a stability? Are you focused on stability or are you focused on scale? This fundamental decision will change the landscape of what you will focus on, which then ultimately changes the trajectory of your success. If you want help with that, gain some perspective of how to stabilize and how to scale properly without you having to try and think, same thing over and over again, thinking that it's going to change somehow in the next year or two. Stop wasting your time, get some perspective, gain someone to get the most out of you. That's what we can do for you in Nitro. Give us a ring, send me a message, and let's see whether you qualify for what we do in Nitro in the following year. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.